Imagine, there's an ancient city that doesn't appear on any map. Buried beneath the eternal snow of the Canadian Rockies? Not a Native American legend, but something even military researchers can't explain.
I'm not sure, General. Readings are off the charts.
A city, with its own light, without a sun. Stone passageways forming ancient, unknown symbols. And a voice. Yes, a voice. Echoing from beneath the ground, calling. Some explorers go missing. The ones who return speak a strange language. Scientists call it a hoax. But footprints and artifacts say otherwise. It's a legend that can't be erased from Canadian history. And this time, we dive in. Welcome to The Legend of the Underground City of the Rockies. 1934. A dense forest at the foot of the Rockies, Alberta. The sky is gray as snow covers the ground. The footsteps of a hunter are heard. Elijah McCrae, an old fur trapper. He stops in front of a strange crevice in the rock, hidden behind a bush. From the crevice, a gust of warm air emerges. It doesn't make sense, it's -5 degrees outside. Curiosity leads him inside. With an oil lamp and a wooden spear, he navigates the narrow passage. The passage is unlike any other cave. The walls are smooth, as if carved. There are circular patterns. Not an echo, not an animal. A voice like a whisper but repeated and regular. A foreign language he didn't understand. Elijah panicked. He backed away. Slipped, and caught a glimpse of a layered eye-like symbol on the wall. He ran outside, breathing heavily. Marking a tree and noting the location on his leather map. For 20 years, he never returned. Elijah's grandson, Mark McCrae, a geology student, discovered the old chest while renovating his grandfather's house. Inside the chest, an old map, notes, and a piece of cloth with a strange pattern. Like an ancient tribal symbol, but unknown. Mark was curious. He compared the symbol to those of the Blackfoot, Cree, and Dean tribes. Nothing matched. He invites 3 companions, Lucy, anthropologist, Dan, videographer, and Julian, professional climber. Spring 1999. They climb toward the point indicated on Elijah's map. The sky is overcast, the snow is melting, and the path is getting slippery. After 2 days of hiking and climbing, they arrive. The marked ancient tree is still there. The crevice still emits warm steam. Mark turns on the flashlight. They slowly enter. The air changes. Warm, but uncomfortable. The passage leads down. It's silent except for their footsteps and the sound of dripping water. On the wall, they find a layered eye symbol just like Elijah noted. Lucy begins recording and taking notes. There's some kind of sacred geometric pattern here, not natural, she says. Julian finds a triangular rock protruding from it. She pressed the floor, shook slightly. A stone shifted, opening a gap into a new space. The room was pitch black. But as Mark entered, a faint light came on by itself from the wall. It wasn't a lamp, but some kind of natural luminescence in the stone carvings. It was a pale blue, pulsating like breath. They stood frozen. The room was round, and in the center was a stone altar. On the altar, a roll of old cloth. Lucy touched it. It was warm. Like it had been made recently. Mark said, "This place isn't just a cave. It was built by something." And began recording. But after a few minutes, the camera died completely. The battery was at 100%. They tried the radio. There was no signal. Just a strange buzzing frequency. Lucy whispered, "We have to get out, this place feels alive." As they were about to leave, they heard footsteps from the hallway behind the altar. But there were 4 of them, and they were all standing. Mark dared to walk down the hallway alone. He walked slowly, then stopped. A new room opened. Inside was a wall with scratches like ancient writing. He touched it. Suddenly, a whisper was heard, this time as if calling his name, "Mark." Suddenly, a dim light flickered. Lucy screamed, "Mark, get out now." They all ran out breathless, bodies trembling. Outside, the sky was dark. Mark looked back. The hallway had been blocked by a rock slide. Tensions rise. Mark and his team returned to town, carrying a mysterious find. But whispers from underground begin to plague their minds. 2 days after leaving the cave, Mark and his team arrive at a nearby village. They look tired, but they're carrying damaged reels and video. Lucy tries to turn on Dan's camera. The file is corrupted, everything in the cave is completely dark. And says quietly, "I was sure we recorded everything." Mark checks the battery, it's still charged. Strange. At night, Mark can't sleep. From behind the cabin window, a soft voice comes. Mark, he stands up abruptly. The voice, the same as in the hallway. But there's no one outside, the forest is silent. Only the shadow of a tree swayed in the night breeze. The next day, they took the roll of cloth to the university in Calgary. It was examined in the archaeology lab. Professor Haney, an expert in ancient symbols, examined it. She was silent for a long time. "Isn't this something our native people made? It's older," she said. "And this pattern looks like coordinates?" Lucy pointed to the circular pattern at the end of the roll. "It's like a star map, but it doesn't match our sky." Meanwhile, Dan began talking to himself frequently. He heard whispers when he was alone in his room. Julian also claimed to hear footsteps in his sleep. They began to feel watched. Mark again examined the symbols from the cave. He found similarities to ancient Sumerian and Dogon symbols from Africa. Everything points to one possibility. This place is no ordinary cave, perhaps the remains of a global prehistoric civilization. Professor Haney makes one suggestion. "You should go back there. Bring a field sensor and a resonance meter." They hesitate, but curiosity wins. The next summer, they return. The mountain where the crevice was located has changed. It's been covered by a landslide, but they find a new, smaller crevice deeper. Slowly inching forward, this time they install microphones, temperature gauges, and ground radar. At the second point of the tunnel, sounds begin to be recorded, not natural sounds, but rhythmic echo patterns. Lucy examines the sound graph. "This isn't a coincidence, it's code," she says. 29x in a flat, robotic voice. Dan felt dizzy. He fell, unconscious. His body was as cold as stone. They pulled Dan out of the hallway. After 5 minutes, he regained consciousness, but his eyes were blank. He spoke softly, "I know, where they are, where they sleep." Mark was shocked. "Who are they, Dan?" Dan just stared at the wall and smiled strangely. "The radio signal is lost. They try to communicate outside, failing. The hallway seems to absorb the waves. Julian wants to get out. But the sounds from inside begin to increase, not one but many. The audio recording shows a low, vibrating tone every 10 seconds. The frequency of 110 Hz is known as the primordial brain resonance frequency. In ancient ritual sites, this number often appears. They suspect, this place is more than just an underground city. This is an active site of consciousness resonance. Lucy says, "They built this place, to speak, not with their mouths." And speaks softly again. "The city is listening to us now." The lights begin to flicker. The air changes, there is an invisible pressure pressing down on their chests. The voices became clearer, "They're coming, they're bringing fire, we're hiding." Julian panicked. He started running out of the hallway. Mark and Lucy followed. Outside, their breathing was labored. Dan stayed inside, unmoving. They waited for 3 hours. And finally, he came out on his own. But his face was pale and he seemed like a different person. Mark approached, and stared at him and spoke in an unrecognizable language. Lucy recorded his voice and played it back slowly. His words, "We never die." Mark began to match the voice recording to the roll of cloth. The symbols on the cloth turned out to be not just writing, but sound notation. Like the score of another language, a language of echoes. A language of resonance. Lucy called it the echoglyph, the echo symbol. And the site, they named it, the Chamber of Voice. A week after returning home, they were contacted by someone from the Canadian government. They were asked to come to headquarters and hand over all the notes, scrolls, and voice data. Lucy asked, "Why?" The answer was simply, "It's a matter of national security." Mark was silent. But he knew the site would be closed. A few weeks later, the location where the tunnel was located was surrounded. Helicopters, military tents, barbed wire. They called it Site 29X. No one else was allowed in. Julian disappeared from communication, Lucy moved abroad. Mark was the only one who kept a copy of the voice recording. It was stored on an encrypted drive. Sometimes in the dead of night, Mark sat alone and replayed the sound of the hallway. As the sound echoed, the mirror in his room shook. He said softly, "That voice isn't just from underground, but from the past. Or the future." The legend of the underground city has just opened a new chapter. And it's not about the stones or the hallway. It's about communication between worlds. Does the city still hear us? Or are we starting to hear them? This chapter closes, but the echoes haven't stopped. because the hallway is still talking. And they're not done yet. They return with limited permission to Site 29X. But what they found was out of this world. 3 months after the site was closed by the military, Mark received an anonymous letter. It read, "There's another entrance. You're not done yet." Attached, GPS coordinates in the mountains, 6 kilometers from the original location. Mark was skeptical, but his desire to solve the mystery drove him. He contacted Lucy, now living in Greenland. Lucy agreed, "If it's their voices again, I want to hear it for myself." They met again secretly in Jasper National Park. No sophisticated equipment, just a flashlight, an analog camera, and a voice recorder. Day 2 of the trip, the weather suddenly changed. The bright sky suddenly darkened, as if afternoon had turned to night. Behind the frozen valley, they discovered an unknown cave. It was higher than the previous entrance, and it was trembling gently. Cautionfully entering, the natural passageway transformed into a stone architectural structure. The carvings slowly lit up as they approached. Lucy stared at the wall and whispered, "These symbols flow. Like they're alive." A large room opened before them. It was octagonal in shape, topped with a stone dome. In the center of the room, a crystal pillar as tall as a man, glowing from within a purplish blue. Mark approached, his touch made the light grow stronger. The passageways around the room lit up one by one. "This is the power source, not electricity. But the resonance of light," Lucy said. Suddenly, from one of the hallways there was the sound of heavy breathing. They fell silent. The sound wasn't an echo. It was real. They shone their flashlights down the hallway. A figure appeared, like a large body, sitting cross-legged. Covered in moss, the stone, and the dust of time. But its chest was moving up and down. The creature was breathing. Lucy recorded, whispering, "Not human." Nearly 3 meters tall, long ears, pale gray skin. Its eyes were closed, as if in a deep sleep. But from its body came a pulse of light onto the wall. "This isn't a fossil, this is a guardian," Mark said quietly. Behind the creature, a wall covered with spiral symbols. One of them spun slowly, like a clockwork mechanism. Lucy turned it. The light from the crystal in the center began to flash like Morse code. Suddenly, the creature's body moved slightly. Its head turned to the left, its eyes still closed. A deep voice came from the wall. "The awakener must understand." Lucy paused. "He is conscious," she said. Mark recorded, his hands trembling. The creature raised a hand. It pointed to one of the symbols, an eye within 3 circles. In the light, an image of a city appeared. Spiral roads, stone pillars, and a purple sky. "Is this the past?" Lucy whispered. "Where did they come from?" The projection showed tall, gray-skinned figures. Walking slowly, calmly, blending with the light. Then images of war appeared. Explosions, the city was destroyed. Then the city sank underground. The creature lowered its head, a voice emerged. "We sleep so that the world does not perish." The crystal light suddenly dimmed, the walls trembled lightly. Mark whispered, "They are no ordinary creatures. They sealed themselves." The hallway began to echo. It wasn't a voice but a warning. Lucy said, "We mustn't wake everyone. This is a warning." They retreated. The creature became still again. The light on its body slowly faded, falling asleep again. The walls dimmed again. But the symbols on the crystal pillars remained faintly lit. Lucy wrote in her journal, "This site is not a dead city. It is a sleeping city." Before leaving, they photographed the final symbol pattern. It was like an hourglass, with a single point lit. Outside the cave, morning was waiting. But strangely, the time hadn't changed. Their watches still showed 2:15 when they entered. Lucy said, "We are in a space that holds time." Mark nodded slowly. "And their time isn't up yet." A few weeks later, the symbols they recorded began to appear at other ancient sites in Egypt, Tibet, even Indonesia. What does all this have to do with each other? The creature sleeping beneath the Rockies might not be the only one. They're scattered all over the world. And all waiting for the same time to wake up. Mark and Lucy agree to hide the data for now. The world isn't ready. But in Mark's dream, the creature comes. Standing in a long, endless hallway. The creature stares at him and says, "If one of us wakes, all of us will wake." Mark wakes in a cold sweat. The clock ticks, but it ticks softly, too softly. He records the dream in his journal. And writes one sentence, "Time is no longer ours." Lucy withdrew from public view. Writing a book under the pseudonym, The Sleeper Beneath. The book was banned in several countries. But it became a cult hit among mystery hunters. Meanwhile, the military returned to Site 29X. They dug deeper and discovered a larger chamber. But one expedition team never returned. The last log from the military radio contained only one voice, "They're awake." Today the cave is locked. But whispers from within are still occasionally heard by night hikers. Some locals believe the voices are prayers or warnings. The creature may not have moved yet, but the world has begun to change. The legend of the underground city is no longer a folk tale. It's become a global secret. And time continues to flow. Until finally, all who sleep awaken. A fragment of a stone scroll reveals a message, but no human can read it except the voice itself. A few weeks after emerging from the second cave, Mark sends the crystal pillar symbols to an ancient linguist in Iceland. He waits anxiously. Meanwhile, Lucy continues to try to piece together sound patterns from the symbols they've discovered. She calls this project Echo Script. The symbols don't just form sentences. They contain specific frequencies in geometric patterns. Lucy begins matching the symbols to ancient musical notation like the Dogon pentatonic scale and the Tibetan scale. She begins to hear the results. And one particular melody makes the lights in her house vibrate gently. It's not just writing, she says to Mark. But the instructions are active, like a voice button. Mark also received a reply from Professor LaRuse in Iceland. This isn't a language, it's a program. The script was like active code. Lucy played a 528 Hz frequency in a specific pattern, and the walls of their room reflecting a soft blue light. They tried repeating the frequency from another segment. The results were surprising. The mirror in the room suddenly cracked. Some frequencies aren't for humans, Mark said. This isn't just communication. It's a key. They called the master symbol the sleep key. In the center of the symbol, there was a pattern that resembled DNA, but the spiral was reversed. Lucy examined the pattern, then she realized this wasn't human DNA. It was another genetic structure. They begin to suspect the creature isn't just sleeping but waiting to be activated by a specific sound. And now, they have one piece of the code from the stone scroll. But only one small piece. Mark returns to the first cave site, stealthily. He finds a small stone chip like a segment of a large tablet. The stone has a faint engraving. It looks like a sundial with numbers around it. Lucy matches the numbers to the Dogon star calendar. The date matches December 21st, the solstice. If this is true, they're marking a moment, the day they awaken. The mysterious voice appears again on Lucy's recorder. It wasn't recorded consciously, it came at night. When opened, the voice said, time was written. Blood was exchanged, light was opened. Lucy trembled. This isn't a metaphor. It's a procedure. Mark contacted Professor Haney, a professor of ancient anthropology. But it's older than that. Haney mentioned the possibility that this manuscript was part of a quantum communication system, connecting consciousness through a resonance field. This meant the manuscript could convey commands to something down there. But Haney warned, one wrong segment, it could awaken something you don't want to awaken. Lucy tried rearranging the segments. Each time they were combined, the result was a different sound wave. Some frequencies made plants wilt in 2 minutes. Others made water form spiral patterns. Lucy said quietly, these symbols are a language for the elements of nature. Mark began to realize something. If this is a language, then who is the sender? And if we are only the receivers, are we meant to understand? That night, Lucy had a strange dream. She was in a giant stone hall. Tall beings stood around her. They pointed to the sky. The sky was full of glowing symbols, then a star exploded. She woke up with a symbol formed from the dust on the table. A symbol she had never seen before. She redrawn it and sent it to Mark. Mark matched it. It was a symbol that hadn't appeared on the scroll yet. He wondered, they're sending the next part in their dreams? They began recording their dreams every night. And slowly, the symbols formed a complete circle. Lucy began calling this project the sleeping circle. A code map to awaken something or seal it back. Mark realized, some symbols lit up when exposed to 432 Hz sound. Others were only active at 7.83 Hz, the Earth's frequency. If these symbols were activated simultaneously, would it awaken the city? Or awaken beings far older than the city? In one fragment, it was written, if 3 keys are opened, the middle light will return. What is the middle light? Energy? Consciousness? Being Lucy began to believe, the middle light might be the entity that connects all sleeping beings. Mark wanted to stop it all. But it was too late. Signs begin to appear in the real world. Symbols on cow hides in Alberta, geometric patterns in snowfields. Some children draw the symbols, without ever being taught. They say, I saw them in a dream, in an underground place. The scroll is alive. It transmits information subconsciously. Lucy wants to burn the notes. Mark says, if we don't guard this, who will? Lucy looks at him. If we fail, they rise in imbalance. In the end, they only keep one copy. It's rewritten by hand, locked with 3 layers of encryption. And it closes with the scroll's final words, do not awaken the middle light unless night becomes day. What does that mean? A time code? A cosmic metaphor? Lucy believes, when the Earth's magnetic poles shift, that's the sign that night becomes day. The latest scientific reports show The Earth's magnetic field is starting to become unstable. If Lucy's theory is correct, then the time is near. Today, some of their notes have disappeared. Stolen, deleted, or absorbed by something, but the echoes of the voices from the hallway, sometimes they still appear on their recorders without being turned on. And in those voices, there's only one sentence: prepare 3 keys. They're almost awake. The chapter closes with fear and awe, because not everything that's written can be read. And not everything that speaks needs a mouth. The flashlight beam bounced off a wall that wasn't made of natural stone but rather old, rusty metal, like a giant door waiting to be opened. There were symbols of eyes, triangles, and writing that didn't belong to any language they knew. "This isn't made by modern humans," Emil murmured, his breath fogging in the cold air. As soon as Jack touched it, the door opened by itself, rumbling softly like a breath held for thousands of years. Their footsteps echoed inside the room, seemed alive, as if watching them. "This place isn't dead," whispered Dr. Reyes. "It's just sleeping." Guardian statues stood watch, their helmets resembling reptilian creatures or ancient gods. In the center of the hall, a black sphere floated, emitting a sound like a whisper from another time. "It's not technology, it's memory. This machine holds the memories of a lost civilization." He suddenly falls and his eyes stare blankly. What does he see? Light. In human faces? He sees a living city, not a legend. A secret world underground. But it also realizes they have arrived. "You are not our descendants? Why have you entered? Who are you?" Reyes asks, but the voice didn't answer. Instead, the room began to shake. They saw the original inhabitants of this city. Not human, not alien, but something in between. Remnants of Earth's ancient ancestors who chose to hide from history. They couldn't leave. This city had locked them in. One of the statues wasn't a statue. It was moving, walking toward them. "The guardian of the underground city has awakened." "He didn't attack, he just observed." Jack whispered, "Perhaps he's assessing us, measuring whether we're enemies or guests." Then the voice came again. Soft but echoing in their heads. "Heir to light or bringer of destruction?" The room suddenly changed. The walls became screens, showing history like a film from ancient times. They saw the same mountain millions of years ago. This city was built by intelligent beings when humans still hunted with stones. A civilization that coexisted with the energy of the earth. They didn't conquer nature, they became one with it. But then came the great shock: the sky turned red. And they decided to disappear, sealing this city forever. "Because humanity isn't ready," the voice said. "And perhaps never will be." Reyes slowly stepped forward. "Then why did you let us in?" A pause, then, "Because time is running out. Your world will crack, and we are only shadows left." The screen changed, mountains were collapsing. Oceans were rising. A great catastrophe awaited the world above. Jack gripped Reyes's shoulder. "This isn't just a city, it's a warning." The guard pointed toward the glowing passageway. "One of you may bring the light out. But only one." They looked at each other. "Only one?" Emil said, "Then choose her." Emil smiled, then stepped back and disappeared in a wave of light. Reyes screamed, "But it's too late. The passageway has closed, and Emil has become part of the city." Jack and Reyes reappear outside the cave in the morning, as if it were all just a long dream. But Reyes's hand holds something, a small black crystal. Proof that it's real. The camera rises to the sky. The mountain stands majestically, still protecting the ancient city that has returned to sleep. And a final voice is heard: "If you return, make sure you bring peace, not greed." Reyes stares at the black crystal in his hand. A soft light pulses from it like a heartbeat. In his Vancouver campus lab, he and Jack secretly study the crystal without telling anyone. The spectroscopic test results disrupt all the equipment. Its composition unknown to modern science. "This isn't from Earth, or maybe from a different Earth," Jack mutters, staring at the flashing screen. They agree to keep it a secret. Not out of fear, but because the risk is too great. But word begins to spread. A young researcher steals photos from their lab and then secretly uploads them. Within 48 hours, news of the crystal from the hidden city spread like wildfire. The media, government agencies, and even the military are on the trail. Someone tries to hack Jack's computer system. They realize this isn't just archaeology anymore. It's a hunting ground. Jack calls Reyes. "We need to disappear for a while. We're not ready to protect this yet." They leave town for Emil's old cabin in the woods. There, Reyes hears something in his sleep. A voice from within the crystal. "Your time is running out. The light will go out if misused." Reyes wakes. The crystal now shows the image of the city and something moving within it. Not a guard, but another figure. Dark, coiled. Like a parasite locked beneath the city. Emil may not have sacrificed himself just for them. But to keep something locked up. If the city is opened, we won't just find civilization, but also the awakening of something that should have remained dormant. Reyes and Jack knew they had only two choices: hide it forever or warn the world. But who would believe them? The world was too busy chasing power and the city was too tempting. If someone has to guard it, let us do it. They swore an oath in the dead of night in the dark of the forest to be the last guardians of a secret that could change the world. On a foggy night, Reyes awakens to the sound of footsteps outside the cabin. Heavy, slow, but sure that he peeks out the window. A tall, black-cloaked figure stands at the edge of the forest. Silent, facing the cabin, Jack follows. "Did you hear that too?" he murmurs. But when they open the door, there's no one outside. Just a light snow and inhuman footprints, three-pronged, like claws. The black crystal begins to vibrate, slowly emitting a red glow, like a warning. In its glow, the image of the underground city is reflected and the creature staring back from the ruins. "He knows we're carrying this," Reyes whispers. "Something has awakened. Something that doesn't want to be seen." That figure wasn't a guard, but a remnant of a civilization that once conquered the dungeon. The dark creature didn't need a body. It could move through sound, through dreams and through light. The next day, Jack began to change. He was restless, his gaze was blank, as if someone was peering through his eyes. Reyes realized something was wrong. He searched for answers in Emil's notes, which he had brought with him. One sentence kept repeating, "It's not the hidden city but the prison." Reyes tried to destroy the crystal but couldn't. The red light grew brighter and the voices returned. A voice imitating Emil, then his mother, then Jack. Everyone tried to persuade him to open the underground gate. On his last night in the cabin, Jack disappeared. Reyes finds him walking toward the mountains carrying the crystal. Reyes chases after him, deep snow and bitter cold, but the voices in his head grow louder. On the mountainside, Jack stands at the opening of a cave, one they've never seen before. "It's time," Jack whispers, his eyes pitch black. "He's waited too long." Reyes screams, "It wasn't you." But Jack's shadow smiles and steps into the darkness. A final red light illuminates the stone wall before everything is gone. Silence, frozen. And too late. Several days have passed since Jack disappeared in that cave. Reyes returns to town, alone, and devastated. No one believes his story. Even the local news reports that Jack disappeared due to hypothermia. But Reyes knows, something has opened up in those mountains. Not just a cave, but a passageway to an ancient entity. He begins to record everything. Every sound, every vision, even the nightmares that have come since that night. Some nights, he can still hear Jack's voice, calling from behind the rocks, from beneath the floor. A voice that is sometimes gentle, sometimes angry, and sometimes, it resembles himself. The crystal he once thought was shattered, it has only faded. Now, its color has turned a deep blue. He goes to the École de Montréal, trying to submit evidence. But Emil's files have been burned, everything is gone. Only one file remains, a fragment of Emil's handwritten note, with the symbol of the city Reyes saw in his dream. Emil's last writing reads, "If voices start singing your name, then you're too close." Reyes decides to go back, one more time. But not to find Jack. But, to end it all. Before him, the cave mouth opens again. But this time, there's no sound. He lights a fire, ready to burn everything. But then, Jack's voice comes back, "I'm not lost, Ray. I'm here." Reyes hesitated, tears welled up. But he knew, it wasn't Jack. It was just his imagination that he dropped the gasoline. A fire erupted, it spread up the cave walls, and a roar came from the ground. The ground shook, rocks crumbled. The mountain screamed in an unknown language, in a tone that pained the soul. A blue light exploded, and all was black. Silence.no news for days. The search team found only burned-out fires and cracked crystals. But no trace of Reyes. Until, a mysterious letter arrived at the local library, with no sender. It contained just one page, an old map, and a message, "If the city wakes, don't listen to its song." The researchers ignored it. But that night, the night watchman heard a strange song coming from the basement. A song without lyrics. Just a low note, vibrating in the bones. And from the downstairs window, two eyes peered out. Eyes that didn't blink, eyes that had long been asleep. Scene 286. Years passed, snow continued to cover the Canadian mountains. As if holding a secret that didn't want to be disturbed. Reyes' name disappeared from the news. There were no official records, there was no burial. But in the climbing community, his name lived on. Told in whispers. He was the one who heard the city. A city that wasn't on the map. Undocumented, but it always had one witness. Several archaeologists tried to retrace the old path, but none found the same cave. It was as if the mountain closed itself in, choosing who could enter and who would never return. Meanwhile, in Montreal, the old library stood silent. And in its basement, the voice still rang. A low-pitched voice, resonating at a frequency that could only be felt, not heard. The night watchman often changed jobs. Always with the same excuse, "Someone called me, in my dreams." And on the 17th winter night since Reyes' disappearance, the snow fell very quietly. Amidst that silence, a small child appeared, holding something made of ice. A piece of deep blue crystal. The child smiled. And from behind his tiny lips, came the sound of an ancient melody. The same melody that once drove Emile mad. Jack was gone, and Reyes burned with conviction. Or perhaps, it was only pretending to be asleep. Because that voice never disappeared. It was simply waiting for a new listener.